As we saw in Part 1, the authors of this book intentionally distort and misrepresent the views of non-believers to make them appear dumb and superstitious, saying that their superstitions kept them from studying nature because they were afraid to do anything that would make the gods of nature angry with them. In the following section, we will see a continuation of this trend, and also come across our first outright lie. This section is honestly titled, Surrounded by Superstition. Let us begin. During the Middle Ages, between 500 and 1500 AD, people looked back to the Greek philosopher Aristotle for their ideas about science. People believed, for example, that the universe revolved around the earth, and they still believed in spontaneous generation. Frogs and fish, they said, were formed in the sky during storms and rained down on the earth. Maggots and worms, according to medieval scientists, developed from rotten meat, and the Bible was a closed book during the Middle Ages. Because people did not have the Bible to guide them in their beliefs, superstition took the place of science. Okay, there's so much to say about this that I'm going to take it line by line. But first, let's have a quick history lesson. In the year 380, Christianity became the official religion of Rome. 100 years later, the year 476 is marked as the fall of Rome. With it, Rome's education system also fell. In its place, the churches became the centers for education and literacy throughout the Middle Ages. So now that we know that the Roman Catholic Church was essentially the source of education for the common man, let's have a look at the writer's claims. People believed, for example, that the universe revolved around the earth. Compared with today's knowledge, that's obviously a foolish notion. But let's not forget that Copernicus hadn't even been born yet, and the geocentric models of that time did a fair job at predicting orbits. Let's also not forget that the Bible supports geocentrism, so it was taught by the church. Copernicus actually delayed publishing his book due to fear of criticism, and rightly so, since as we see with Galileo, he was punished for supporting it. He even had evidence from his new telescope. So, contrary to what the writers say, not only was the idea of geocentrism reasonable for the time, it was also the Christian church that promoted the Bible-based belief in geocentrism. And they still believed in spontaneous generation. Yes, they did. Frogs and fish, they said, were formed in the sky during storms and rained down on the earth. Oddly enough, this is actually true. During storms like hurricanes, frogs and fish can really be pulled up into the sky and later rain down. So the writers have it wrong here. This isn't some crazy belief that should be laughed at. It's a documented and true event that can happen today. Maggots and worms, according to medieval scientists, develop from rotten meat. This idea really isn't that hard to believe. I mean, people believe this today. Look up videos about worms coming from pork. And I swear fruit flies come from bananas. The Bible was a closed book during the Middle Ages. Because people did not have the Bible to guide them in their beliefs, superstition took the place of science. This is just an outright lie. The Bible was a wide open book throughout the Middle Ages. During this time, the Catholic Church became one of the most powerful institutions in Europe. This would not have been possible if people didn't believe in the Bible. And what about the Crusades? Oh, right. Since no one was reading the Bible, those must have been based on some other book. And of course, the works of great Christian philosophers like St. Thomas Aquinas didn't happen because the Bible was sealed shut. Okay, next paragraph. Aristotle did not believe that God is the creator of nature and is therefore separate from nature. He believed that nature itself is a force, and that mankind is linked in a mystical union of rocks, trees, and animals. By accepting the ideas of Aristotle, people during the Middle Ages worshipped nature, and because they did not understand nature, they feared it. Their superstitious worship and fear of nature kept them from studying nature and learning how to make nature work for them. Although it is true that Aristotle thought that there was a unity in nature, it is incorrect to then assert that this belief continued throughout the Middle Ages. Like any scientific theory, it is tested, changed, and improved over time. And let us not forget that the people here were deep into Christianity throughout the Middle Ages. So this so-called superstitious worship that inhibited the study of nature must have been Christianity, which is certainly not what the writers are trying to portray here. Stay tuned for part 3, where the writers try to claim that the Protestant Reformation was the cause of the scientific revolution.